What if a country could erase its debt not by paying it, not by taxing people more, but by printing paper? What if everyone became rich overnight without producing more, without finding new gold? And what if that paper wealth was backed by a land so distant, so unknown, that almost nobody had ever seen it? This is the story of a gambler who became a banker, a fugitive who became the most powerful man in France. His name was John Law. This is the story of the Mississippi Bubble. And by the end of this video, you will understand how paper money was born, how debt was turned into stock, and why this disaster still matters today. Act 1. After the Sun King. In the year 1715, France looked powerful. Versailles was shining. The army was feared. But beneath the gold, France was bankrupt. Decades of war had drained the treasury. The national debt was enormous, much larger than all the gold and silver in the country combined. More than half of all tax revenue went only to paying interest. There was not enough money left to run the state. Soldiers went unpaid. Officials waited months for wages. Trade slowed to a crawl. France was not just poor, it was frozen. The new king was only 5 years old, so power passed to a regent, and the regent needed a miracle. Act 2. The education of a gambler. John Law was born in Scotland. His father was a banker. From a young age, Law learned a dangerous idea. A bank does not need to hold all the gold it promises. As long as people trust the bank, only a small number will ever ask for their money at the same time. Law was brilliant, but reckless. He loved luxury, fashion, and gambling. In London, he lost his fortune. Then his life collapsed completely. After a duel, John Law killed a man. He was sentenced to death, but he escaped prison. And for the next 20 years, he lived as a fugitive across Europe. Act 3. Ahead of his time. During exile, Law studied banks in Amsterdam, in Venice, in Paris. He noticed something important. Strong economies were not limited by gold. They were limited by credit. Law believed money was not wealth. Money was a tool. If a country had land, labor, and business, but lacked money, the economy would stop breathing. So the state should issue paper money backed by assets to keep trade moving. In 1705, Law wrote his theory down. At the time, almost no one listened. During exile, Law studied banks in Amsterdam, in Venice, in Paris. He noticed something important. Strong economies were not limited by gold. They were limited by credit. Law believed money was not wealth. Money was a tool. If a country had land, labor, and business, but lacked money, the economy would stop breathing. So the state should issue paper money backed by assets to keep trade moving. In 1705, Law wrote his theory down. At the time, almost no one listened. Act 4. The system is born. In 1716, France finally gave Law a chance. He created a private bank that issued paper notes. These notes were stable, more stable than royal coins. People trusted them. Trade improved. Interest rates fell. The economy slowly came back to life. Then came the second step. Law created a giant trading company with a monopoly over trade in Louisiana. On paper, Louisiana looked endless. In reality, it was swamp and disease. But Law saw something else. He saw an asset large enough to absorb France's debt. Act 5. Turning debt into stock. France's debt was crushing, so Law proposed something radical. Government debt would be exchanged for shares of the company. Old, broken bonds became valuable stock. The bank printed money. The money bought shares. The shares replaced debt. Debt turned into equity. It looked like financial magic. Act 6. Mania in Paris. Mississippi shares exploded in price. 500, 1,000, 5,000, 10,000. People borrowed money to buy more shares. This was early leverage. The center of the madness was a narrow street in Paris. Crowded, loud, chaotic. Nobles stood next to servants. Priests traded beside criminals. Fortunes were made overnight. For the first time, people were called millionaires. Paris became a casino. Act 7. The Mirage. But the foundation was rotten. Louisiana was not rich. There were no gold mines, no emeralds. To support the dream, people were forced onto ships. Prisoners, orphans, poor farmers. Thousands died. Paper wealth in Paris was built on suffering across the ocean. Act 8. The crash. In 1720, confidence cracked. Powerful investors demanded gold for paper. People saw wagons of gold leaving the bank. Panic spread. John Law tried to stop it. He banned gold. He searched houses. He changed values by decree. Nothing worked. Crowds gathered outside the bank. People were crushed. Some died. The share price collapsed. The system was finished. Act 9. Aftermath. John Law fled France. Once the richest man in Europe, he died poor and forgotten. France rejected paper money for generations. But history took a strange turn. Today, every modern economy uses his ideas. Paper money, central banks, debt monetization. John Law was not completely wrong. He was just early. Final takeaway. What we learn. This story teaches us 4 lessons. Money is trust. When trust breaks, systems collapse. Easy money hides risk until reality arrives. Prices must be backed by real value. Paper dreams are fragile. And there is no free lunch. Debt never disappears. It only changes form. John Law built a paper kingdom. For a moment, it worked. Then reality demanded payment. This is money through time.